If you've been on ham radio internet at all within the last couple of weeks, you might have noticed a very well-appointed ham shack showing up, people being jealous of it or commenting on how cool it is. Well, it comes from a movie called Leave the World Behind. Now, this is not a ham radio movie, but it's a really good post-apocalyptic movie. And while we're going to talk about that ham shack, that's the focus of this video, I do want to mention that I find the craziest part about this whole movie is that this is the first fictional movie created by Michelle and Barack Obama. This is their production company, and it's a post-apocalyptic type movie where many of the things that happen almost feel like they were ripped out of the pages of major news stories that happened during Barack's tenure as the U.S. president. So I do highly recommend it, but it also feels kind of ominous, like it's a warning from the Obamas or something. But regardless, there will be no spoilers in this except that it's a pretty all-star cast. Julia Roberts is in it, Ethan Hawke, and Kevin Bacon. All play different characters that really are not preparedness-minded, except for probably Kevin Bacon's character. And they're thrust into many actual situations that kind of set these families on a course of trying to figure out how to survive during a apocalypse-type situation. At some point in the movie, though, this ham shack shows up. And a lot of people got real excited when they saw this for probably a couple of really interesting reasons. So let's take a look, just kind of going left to right here, because I thought this was pretty cool. You can see there is a bencher-type key over in the right-hand side with a handheld, a couple of handhelds. And then above that, you've got, it looks like a diamond power meter. And the first radio that you experience looks like it's a Yaesu FTDX10. When I saw that, I was like, oh, interesting. Which, spoiler alert, these are mostly Yaesu radios. I don't know who exactly was involved in the production of this, but they obviously had a certain bend towards Yaesu radios, which I thought was kind of interesting and all very cutting edge, right? This is all the kind of current lineup, except for that guy right above my head here, the FTM 400. And while I can't be exactly sure on which model it is, the next Yaesu right there, the HF radio, is the FTDX 101. It's either the D or the MP. Now, directly above those are a FTM 400, which is a now no longer in production Yaesu mobile VHF UHF radio. And then the only ICOM I saw in any of this was this ICOM 5100. So a lot of redundancy baked into this, as you can probably see, both these HF radios here in the baseline, as well as the VHF, UHF radios on the top there. Now, what really struck me, and this was not shown in the movie at all, but there's also a Yaesu rotor control here, which this is a rotor box for turning a Yagi-type antenna or a directional antenna. So really well-appointed shack, and it was pretty obvious from looking at it that there was a certain design aesthetic they were going for. Obviously, this being the external monitor layout that you get on the Yaesu radios, I was like, okay, this is actually, somebody at least knew what they were talking about when they set this all up. There's a bit of wires and stuff that's hanging off of this guy over here that looks a little odd, and I'm not exactly sure what that box is. I think the box is probably... No, the radios, the head units are sitting on the radio, so there's something else that's going on here that I'm not aware of. Regardless, I was like, okay, this is a pretty nice little shack setup that they have for this movie. Jokingly, my wife said, boy, whomever did the production on this, they were likely buying equipment in the hopes that after the movie was wrapped that they would be able to keep it all and just be able to take it home. Now, something that is worth noting here is that obviously the frequency that's being displayed, while, yeah, that's part of the 40-meter band, definitely one of those VFOs is outside of the amateur radio. And it looks like that VFO-A, or the VFO on the left-hand side, is showing about an S7 signal at 6.999. And it is running lower sideband. So that's the proper modulation for voice that you'd run if you were going to be running an amateur radio. So a lot of that is predicated by the radio. Like, the radio knows if you're in 40 meters and you're on voice, you likely want to be in lower sideband. But there's a pretty interesting kind of detour that this takes here. At some point, they show you something a little bit different on that right-hand side screen. So here's where there's a bit of a change. So now it's showing an emergency alert system, and I don't want to spoil this because, again, we'll pause right here. Because really, you should go watch this movie. I don't want to spoil any of this. But now, Here's an interesting one. So we're still showing the same frequency space, but this emergency alert system, not really something that we use in amateur radio, at least in the format that I'm seeing here. They went with the design aesthetic that mimics that of like the Yaesu radio, but not exactly any of the format that I'm used to with the applications that I've seen. There is a cool little, pan adapter type thing and a waterfall, and let's see if the waterfall moves at all. It is moving. So at least, that's something that is similar to what we do. So by and large, this was actually a really nicely done tiny segment where amateur radio was featured and featured in pretty cool of a way. Now, this type of stuff makes me think like, military type messaging or military type communications, which, again, amateur radio, we don't really interoperate with the military, and obviously we don't have encrypted communication, and some of this stuff would likely be something that would be some kind of encrypted communique between government entities within the United States and potentially the military. Another factor is that we generally don't have encryption, so there would be no way for us to decode what the military was sending out if they were transmitting encrypted signals. In our case, we don't really do that. By and large, the amateur radio that was used in this video, this whole station, was actually kind of used as a narrative tool. Instead of having someone be introduced into the movie that knew a lot about what was going on or had some kind of insider information, the radio, more or less, in that what you just saw with that emergency kind of message bulletin screen, was filling in some of the details of what was going on, kind of confirming or disproving some of the beliefs of some of the characters. And it was kind of cool to see amateur radio actually used in a really nice way, and it's real, right? There's wires hanging out of the back of the monitor. Looked like a control head wire right here and a number of wires on the other side by the power supply. This is a way better implementation of amateur radio than a lot of times we've seen where, they'll show the back of the radio and there's no coax connected to it because they just didn't think about doing that, or they didn't know what a radio actually was. And although we're off the 40-meter frequency to some degree, we wouldn't be doing lower sideband down at that spot. I think they did a really good job. So hopefully this is going to, introduce people to radio, and it's going to be something exciting. And if you have any questions, I'm here to help. I'd love it if you were to check out my channel, Ham Radio Crash Course, right here. And if you click on Are You New to Radio? Start Here, one of my playlists, that'll give you a whole wealth of videos that, just pick the ones you like, and that's the best place to get started. Always focus on something you enjoy when you're looking at a hobby, and if any of those videos look interesting, well, hey, take a look and possibly give me a thumbs up and subscribing. Appreciate you watching the video today. I thought it was just a fun little taste at a movie that I think you should all go take a look at. Reminder, though, this is not a movie where amateur radio is featured heavily. It's used as a narrative device. But just keep in mind, if you're kind of like me and one of those preparedness types, think about, boy, how lucky did that family get going to that home versus what you may have at your home in terms of preparedness. I'm sure you got some radios potentially lying around, but you have a shack like that? Do you have food, water, and everything else put away that you might need in a situation like that? Pretty interesting movie by and large. I'd also love to hear your comments on that if you were so inclined. Take a look at the links in the description. Join us on the Discord if you have any more amateur radio questions, and I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much for watching. 73.